Hello, everyone. So, I wanted to make a video on Amy Bradley. And for those of you who don't know who Amy Bradley is, there's this whole Netflix series right now. She's very popular right now. It's going viral, basically. It's a very good documentary about this 1998, cruise where Amy Bradley, this woman from Georgia, she disappears on March 24th, 1998. And there's a lot of mystery, a lot of confusion about what happened to Amy Bradley. A lot of different theories, even in the documentary. They have all these facts, and it's still unclear for people, for their own family. So I wanted to look at the astrology, because astrology is not going to tell us you know, who did this to her or what exactly happened, but it will point to what she was going through during this time of disappearance. So I'm looking at her birth chart, connecting it to the date of disappearance, which is March 24th, 1998, and she was born on May 12th, 1974. And so I did a transit chart. Her birthday and that day, March 24th, 1998, in Willemstad, Curacao, this island country in the Caribbean, and that's where she was last seen. She was last seen at 5:30 a.m. So I did the chart for that time, for those of you wondering. So this will be able to tell us a few things. What kind of vibe was she going through? What things was she going through at that time? What do we know from documentary from her family? Well, we know that she was in a good time, of her life. New apartment, new dog, new job, all these things that are life, you know, pivotal life moments. And so she didn't really have a reason to off herself, per se, or just, and her family said she was a lifeguard and, really athletic, strong, and stubborn as well. So she wasn't going to let someone kidnap her and go without a fight. She had things to do and places to be. She wasn't going to let that happen. Um, so, yeah, I don't think she was kidnapped. So, let me tell you what I see here from the astrology. So, first off, well, actually, let me backtrack a little bit. So, she was on this cruise and she didn't in the documentary we know that she was having romantic troubles with her sexuality, uh and she had her lover was speaking on the documentary about how they were going through some tumultuous period in the relationship where Amy did something she regretted and was feeling really bad about that. So that could obviously contribute to what happened. It really could, because Amy was not in the right place for this trip. And she also said, I don't want to go on this cruise. She told her family that. And I don't think her family, forced her in a bad way. I just think they wanted her to go as a family. And so, but I do think it's a big deal that she did not want to go on this cruise because that points to her intuition. Her body was telling her something. Maybe, she kind of knew deep inside that these kinds of things happen on cruises, and that's why she didn't want to go. So that's something important to note. I feel like just the way that she didn't want to go on this cruise, but she still went. And in her astrology chart, the transit chart, I do see that there's a lot of fate here, fated things. For example, let's see. So Jupiter conjunct Jupiter, as well as Saturn square Fortuna. So these are kind of transits, and there's a lot of Neptune transits. For those of you who aren't familiar with astrology, Neptune is all about fog, illusions, what we can't see. So Neptune has this energy to it that when it makes aspects to a birth chart or, planets, um, it can create fog, illusions. And I think one of the reasons so many people are invested in this case, well, first of all, the documentary was really good. I don't usually even finish a documentary, but this one was really good. So that tells you something about the astrology. People aren't usually this invested in someone, especially, you know, Amy Bradley. She was pretty, but she was not a supermodel. Not to make this about her looks, but why is she so magnetic to everyone? Why is everyone so interested in her case? Well, there's a lot of Neptunian energy here. Neptune trine Mercury, Neptune conjunct the moon. That's fog and emotion, high emotions. Neptune sextile ascendant. Well, actually, I take that back. We don't have her ascendant, so I want to not read that one. Neptune conjunct Lilith. Okay. And just a lot of bad transits. If I was an astrologer and she came to me, I would say, don't go on this boat trip, especially if you don't want to go in the first place. There's a lot of things going on in this birth chart. Let me just start off with that. And okay, so yeah, first she has Sun opposite Pluto, right? 0 degrees, Sun opposite Pluto. This is all about power struggles, intense pressure, and also it can point to danger. So, that says something in itself. This was not a good time for this cruise, in my opinion. And obviously, we had to find out the hard way, but yeah, there's a lot going on here. Um, so, I want to talk about the Neptune transits. First, Neptune trine Mercury. So, yes. So, Neptune, like I said, is all about illusions, fog, things we can't see, confusion. You're not able to discern. You're not making the best choices with this kind of energy. Neptune trine Mercury tells me that if she were to have fallen or screamed, people aren't going to hear it. They're in their own world. It's not going to happen. And also, she will have her own troubles communicating things. And that's what I think happened. Is I don't think she was abducted. First of all, logistically, it's very hard on a boat to just transport someone like that. They had reported her missing pretty early on. Um, it's logistically, and she was a fighter, like her family said. I don't think she was abducted. I don't think she's out there. I know there's a lot of good pictures of her and stuff, and a lot of good stories, but I think that it was just really a tragic accident. However, I will say, I do think that she was possibly drugged by someone on the boat. Maybe she was roofied. That's just my opinion. Why do I think that? Well, she has Neptune conjunct Moon, which this is a transit that is very. It points to that in past times when this has happened. Neptune is conjunct the moon, and Neptune, like I said, foggy, things we can't see, conjunct the moon, which is about emotions and kind of the nighttime of that night. Um, she was not feeling good. Also, she did tell her family, I'm not feeling good, and she made it a point to tell her brother that. As we saw in the documentary, she tells her brother, "I'm not feeling good, guys." So that's a big part, I think. She wasn't feeling good, and then she went out to the deck. So I think, you know, and they also said that she did not drink that much. So to be this strong girl who, she didn't drink that much, she was just having a night out, a night out at the bar at on this cruise. I don't think she was that wasted. She even, to tell her brother that she wasn't feeling that good, she was somewhat aware, you know. But I think those drugs that people give people, it can kick in at a certain time. So that's one possibility, that maybe she was drugged and that's why she was feeling so disoriented and sick. But if not, that's still a fact that she told her family she wasn't feeling good, and that's still a big deal, because she was out on this deck. Maybe she did, have to vomit and relieve herself, and she looked down, and maybe something happened. But she was disoriented. She was not feeling good. And it points to that night. She wasn't comfortable. All these crew members were kind of um, staring at her, and they were kind of brought into her appearance. I don't know why. There was so many other women and girls on the boat, but they were so attracted to Amy, and so who knows why that was. But I will say that's another thing. All these Neptune transits that she was going through, Neptune conjunct the moon, Neptune conjunct Lilith, um, Sun opposite Pluto, Sun square Saturn. I think she had this energy about her on that night that made her very magnetic, and people were drawn to her energy. No one really knows why. Sometimes you're drawn to people and you don't even know why. But I think this night she was going through a lot astrologically, and that can kind of come out. People can see that sometimes. And so I do think there was like a heavy energy to her that night. Um, so she didn't feel but good about going on this cruise. All the astrology points to not so good things, and there's still more to talk about. So that night, on this morning, at the time of her disappearance, Uranus was sextile Neptune. Uh, Uranus, that's the planet of, well, they say that's the planet of surprises, and together with Neptune, it's really an energy of confusion. And I think that's why this case is still circling around, and circulating, and it hasn't been resolved because of this. There's a lot of confusion and a lot of uncertainty about what happened. Um, just a lot of fog, and it's another one of the reasons I don't think there was foul play. Because I mean, other than drugging someone to all this time, for all this time to pass, and no one has come out with, anything about foul play. Everyone that was interviewed and did a lie detector test, they passed. So I really don't think it was, someone abducting her, or she was put in this sex trafficking ring. I don't think that's what happened. These ones are also important. So Mars square Mars. Now this is a big one. Mars square Mars. This is when accidents happen. And I'm not talking about like someone abducting you and putting you in this Curacao sex trafficking ring. I'm talking about you fall and you fall down a set of stairs, or terrible things like that, or you fall off a boat. So I think there is an energy of confusion, fog, and an accident. So I don't know, they haven't really talked too much about the weather, but it possibly there could have been fog, um, during this time. I'm not too sure. Um, okay, and then also Jupiter was conjunct Jupiter, so this is her Jupiter return here. And this kind of also talks about fate. Like, I think, however terrible this thing is, you know, I, I think that it was fated. I mean, she was meant to go on this cruise with her family, and not much convincing from other people or herself would kind of stop this trip from happening. And so it sucks, but yeah, she didn't feel good about this trip. The trip didn't go that well, and I do think an accident happened. So that's what I think. Yeah, I don't think she was abducted. It's just logistically, I know that crew members have access to cameras and all these things, but I just don't think that's what happened. And the pictures that people talk about and the stories people say that, they saw Amy Bradley, well, people are liars, I don't want to say that, but it's true. And when there's a case like this that is so popular, there's going to be people who say they saw her. That's just how it is. And so, yeah, like, I do think she was possibly roofied or drugged. I think that's a possibility. You can't rule that out. Um, but yeah, so I think that's what I think. Um, she could have, she wasn't feeling good. This was a cruise she didn't want to be on. She was going through a lot, with her family and relationships. And with all that stress, I think that accidents are even more prone to happen because you're in a chaotic energy and you're not always cognizant about that. But I think, it sucks, but there was an accident here. I don't really feel there was foul play because then you would see some other more different transits like Mars, more Mars squares that weren't about accidents. So that's what I feel. I want you guys to let me know what you think about this case. It's a very interesting case, and truly, I don't think it will ever be solved, especially after all this time. But, and people say, oh, well, she was really close to the dock. If she would have fallen into the ocean, there would have been a piece of clothing or something. And I do think that's a very important point to note. But the ocean and its currents are very strong, and a lot can happen in the ocean. And all these transits, they don't really talk about kind of murder or things like that. But there was a lot of confusion here, and at the end of the day, um, it's just a terrible story and a tragedy. But that's what I think happened. So, all right, thank you, and don't forget to subscribe and like for more.